The Tidebound Legacy, A Tale of the Sunken Kingdoms. Chapter 1. The Calling of the Sea. Maren had always heard the ocean singing, though no one else seemed to notice. The merchants in the harbor market dismissed it as the wind through the masts. Her father, the governor of Crestfall, claimed it was merely her overactive imagination. But Maren knew better. The sea was calling her name. On the morning of her 21st birthday, the calling became impossible to ignore. She stood on the balcony of the governor's mansion, watching the sun rise over the sapphire gulf. The water shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist: deep purples, ethereal greens, silver that seemed to move with intention. And beneath the surface, she swore she saw shapes. Cities, towers, an entire civilization just beyond the reach of sunlight. "You're staring again," said a familiar voice. Maren turned to find her best friend, Isla, leaning against the doorframe, a knowing smile on her face. Isla was everything Maren wasn't: practical, grounded, completely uninterested in fairy tales about the sunken kingdoms. "The tide calling is tonight," Maren said. "Every 7 years, they say the barrier between worlds grows thin, that those with sea blood can cross over." "And you think you have sea blood?" asked Isla gently. "Mare, you're the governor's daughter. Your family tree goes back 12 generations, all human, all boring politicians and merchants." "Then why can I hear it?" Maren demanded. "Why do I dream of breathing underwater? Why does salt water feel more like home than air?" Isla's expression softened. "Because you've always wanted to escape, and the sea represents freedom." She crossed to Maren, taking her hands. "But tonight your father is announcing your engagement to Lord Castor. That's reality. That's your future." Maren's stomach twisted. Lord Castor Thorne, wealthy, influential, and utterly insufferable. Her father had arranged the match months ago, sealing political alliances that would secure Crestfall's position in the Coastal Confederation. "I won't marry him," Maren said quietly. "You don't have a choice. There's always a choice." That evening, as servants prepared the grand ballroom for the engagement announcement, Maren made her decision. She packed a small bag with essentials, left a note for her father, and slipped out through the servants' quarters. Isla found her at the stables. "I knew you'd run," Isla said, but there was no judgment in her voice. "Where will you go?" "The Tidecaller's Cove," Maren replied. "If the legends are true, if there really is a way to the sunken kingdoms, I'll find it tonight." "And if there isn't? If it's just old stories?" "Then I'll keep running until I find somewhere I belong." Maren hugged her friend fiercely. "Tell my father I'm sorry, but I can't be the person he wants me to be." Isla pressed something into her hand, a small compass that had belonged to Isla's grandmother. "Then at least take this so you can find your way home if you ever want to." The ride to Tidecaller's Cove took 2 hours. Maren arrived just as the moon was rising, full and impossibly large, turning the ocean silver. The cove was a natural amphitheater of stone, with ancient symbols carved into the rocks that glowed faintly in the moonlight. She wasn't alone. A figure stood at the water's edge, tall and commanding, with skin that seemed to shimmer between human and something else. As Maren approached, he turned, and she saw he had eyes like the deep ocean, black in the center, ringed with bioluminescent blue. "You hear it too," he said, not a question. "The singing," Maren confirmed. "All my life." He studied her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but had somehow not. "I'm Kael, Prince of Abyssia, one of the sunken kingdoms. I've been sent to find someone." "Find who?"
"The Lost Princess of Meridian." He moved closer, and Maren noticed the way water seemed to cling to him, droplets suspended against gravity. 21 years ago, the kingdom of Meridian was destroyed in a war between the sunken realms. The royal family was killed, or so everyone believed. But our seers have had visions. The infant princess survived, hidden in the surface world, her memories bound by magic. Maren's heart was racing. Why are you telling me this? Because the moment I saw you, I felt it, the call of royal blood. He held out his hand. Come with me into the water. If I'm right, the ocean will remember you. If I'm wrong, he shrugged, you'll drown and I'll have wasted everyone's time. That's a terrible sales pitch, Maren said, but she was already moving toward the water. Wait, Kael's hand on her arm stopped her. Before you decide, you need to understand what you're walking into. The Sunken Kingdoms are at war. 3 realms fighting for control of Meridian's ruins, each claiming the right to rule. If you really are the Lost Princess, you become the most valuable piece on the board. Every kingdom will want to use you, marry you off, or kill you. Sounds better than marrying Lord Castor, Maren muttered. A smile tugged at Kael's lips. You're either very brave or very foolish. Can't I be both? This time he laughed, a sound like waves against rocks. Then come, let the tide calling begin. They walked into the water together. It was cold at first, shocking against Maren's skin. But as they moved deeper, something changed. The water grew warm, welcoming, and when it closed over her head, Maren didn't panic. She could breathe. The ocean filled her lungs like air, and instead of drowning, she felt more alive than ever. Her vision sharpened, showing her the underwater world in impossible detail, and as she looked down at her hands, she saw them shimmer and change, webs forming between her fingers, her skin taking on a faint, iridescent quality. "Welcome home, Princess," Kael said, his voice clear despite the water. "Welcome to the Sunken Kingdoms." He offered his hand again, and this time Maren took it. Together, they swam down, 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 into a world Maren had only ever seen in dreams. Chapter 2: The Drowned Palace. The descent felt like falling through stars. Bioluminescent creatures drifted past, jellyfish trailing curtains of light, fish that seemed woven from liquid silver, eels whose scales shifted through every color Maren had never known existed. And below them, growing larger with each moment, was a city. Abyssia was magnificent. Towers of coral and crystal rose from the ocean floor, connected by bridges of living kelp. Buildings were carved from massive shells, their mother-of-pearl interiors glowing softly. Gardens of sea flowers bloomed in impossible colors, tended by merfolk who moved through the water with casual grace. And everywhere there was magic. Maren could feel it humming through the water, could see it in the way currents bent around the city, in the protective barriers that kept the crushing deep-sea pressure at bay. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "This is only one of the kingdoms," Kael said. "There are 3 major realms. Abyssia, where I'm from, we're the warrior kingdom, focused on defense and honor. Lumeria, the kingdom of light and art, they're scholars and dreamers. And Tempestia, the storm-touched realm. They control the surface waters and the weather itself." "And Meridian?" Kael's expression darkened. Meridian was the heart, the first kingdom, the one from which all others descended. When it fell, the balance was broken. Now the 3 kingdoms circle its ruins like sharks, each trying to claim its power. They approached a massive palace built into the side of an underwater mountain. Guards in armor of scaled silver blocked their path, tridents held at the ready. "Prince Kael, you've returned, and you've brought a surface dweller?" "I've brought the Lost Princess of Meridian," Kael corrected. "Take us to Queen Nerida, immediately." "The fall of Meridian," Queen Nerida confirmed. "You were there. You remember." She touched Maren's face gently. "Welcome home, Princess Mariselle, though I fear your homecoming brings more complications than joy." Before Maren could respond, another figure entered the throne room. a young man about Kael's age, with the same midnight blue skin and silver markings, but where Kael moved like a warrior, this man moved like a dancer. "Brother," the newcomer said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "I heard you'd returned with an interesting catch." "Maren, this is my younger brother, Prince Dorian," Kael said, and Maren caught the tension in his voice. "Dorian, show respect. This is Princess Mariselle of Meridian." "If she really is who you claim," Dorian said, circling Maren like a shark. "Convenient timing, don't you think? The three kingdoms are on the brink of war over Meridian's ruins, and suddenly the lost heir appears?" He looked at his mother. "This could be a trick, a spy from Lumeria or Tempestia." "The mark doesn't lie," Queen Nerita said firmly. "Marks can be forged, magic can be deceived." Dorian's eyes glittered with something dangerous. "If she wants to claim her throne, let her prove herself. The trial of tides." The throne room gasped. Kael stepped forward angrily. "Dorian, that's traditional," Dorian interrupted. "Any royal claiming a throne must undergo the trial. If she survives, we'll know she's genuine." "If she survives," Kael repeated flatly. "The trial has killed trained warriors. She's been in the water for all of 2 hours." "Then perhaps she's not ready to be a queen," Dorian said with false sympathy. Maren found her voice. "What is the trial of tides?" Queen Nerita looked troubled. "An ancient test of worthiness. The claimant must swim to the heart of the maelstrom, a region where the ocean's magic runs wild, and retrieve a pearl of power. It requires strength, courage, and the ability to navigate the currents without losing yourself to the chaos. And if I refuse? Then you remain here as a guest, but your claim is forfeit. No throne, no power, no right to speak in the councils that will decide Meridian's fate." Maren looked at Kael, who shook his head almost imperceptibly. She looked at Queen Nerita, who seemed torn, and she thought about what she'd left behind, a life of being told what to do, who to marry, how to behave. "I'll do it," Maren said. "Maren, no," Kael started. "When?" Maren asked Dorian directly. He smiled, and it was the smile of someone who just won a game she hadn't known she was playing. "Tomorrow, at the turning of the tide. That gives you time to prepare or to reconsider." The throne room was breathtaking, a vast chamber with walls of living coral that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Seats carved from giant clamshells lined both sides, filled with nobles in flowing garments that seemed part clothing, part living sea life. And at the far end, on a throne of black pearl, sat Queen Nerita. She was formidable, tall and regal, with midnight blue skin marked with silver patterns like breaking waves. Her hair floated around her head in a corona of white, and her eyes were ancient, holding the weight of centuries. "My son," she said, her voice carrying effortlessly through the water, "you've been gone 3 days. I trust you have a good explanation for abandoning your duties." "Mother, I present Maren of Crestfall." Kael gestured to Maren, who suddenly felt very small and very human despite her underwater transformation. "I believe she is Mariselle, the Lost Princess of Meridian." The throne room erupted in whispers. Nobles leaned toward each other, their voices creating currents in the water. Queen Nerita held up a hand, and silence fell instantly. "Bold claim," the queen said. "What proof do you offer?" "She hears the ocean's call. She transformed without training or instruction." And Kael moved to stand beside Maren, placing a hand on her shoulder. "She bears the mark." "What mark?" Maren asked, confused. Kael gently turned her arm, revealing her inner wrist. There, where Maren had always had a small birthmark, was now a symbol glowing with soft blue light,
a crown surrounded by waves. "The royal seal of Meridian," Queen Nerita said, rising from her throne. "I had not thought to see it again in my lifetime." She descended the steps, approaching Maren with a mixture of wariness and something that might have been hope. "Child, do you remember anything of your first years? Any dreams, any fragments?" Maren closed her eyes, reaching for memories that felt just out of reach. "Water," she said slowly. "A palace made of light, someone singing, a woman with a voice like whales calling, and fire. Fire under the water, which shouldn't be possible, but it was. Everything burning, everything dying."
As the court dispersed, Kael pulled Maren aside into a side chamber. "That was foolish. You don't understand what you've agreed to." "Then help me understand," Maren said. "Teach me what I need to know." He studied her for a long moment. "Why? Why accept a suicide mission rather than just live here peacefully?" "Because all my life I've been told I couldn't do things. Couldn't sail because I was a girl. Couldn't study navigation because I was the governor's daughter. Couldn't choose my own future because duty came first." She met his eyes. "This is my chance to prove I'm more than what people expect. To everyone, but mostly to myself." Something shifted in Kael's expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit. "All right," he said. "Then we have one day to teach you what it takes most merfolk a lifetime to learn. We'd better get started." Chapter 3. Lessons in Drowning. Kael took Maren to the training grounds, a vast expanse of open water beyond the city's protective barriers, where the ocean floor dropped away into darkness. Other warriors were practicing combat, their movements fluid and deadly, tridents flashing in the bioluminescent light. "First lesson," Kael said. "Down here, everything you knew about physics is wrong. Water doesn't resist your movement, it enhances it if you know how to work with the currents." He demonstrated, moving through a complex series of motions that looked like a dance but was clearly martial training. His body became one with the water, flowing around obstacles, using eddies and currents to increase his speed and power. "Now you try," he said. Maren attempted to copy his movements and immediately tumbled head over heels, disoriented. Kael caught her before she drifted too far. "Breathe," he said, steadying her. "I know it's strange, but you are breathing. Trust your body. It knows what to do, even if your mind doesn't remember." They practiced for hours. Kael was a patient teacher, correcting her form without criticism, encouraging her when she grew frustrated. Slowly, Maren began to feel it, the way the water moved around her, the currents that could be ridden like invisible roads through the ocean. "Better," Kael said. "But the maelstrom is not just about swimming, it's about navigating chaos. Your mind will play tricks on you. The currents there are infused with wild magic. They'll show you your deepest fears, your greatest desires, anything to knock you off course." "How do I fight that?" "You don't fight it, you accept it." He moved closer, his dark eyes intense. "The ocean respects truth, Maren. Whatever the maelstrom shows you, acknowledge it. Don't run from it. That's how you stay sane." As evening fell, or what passed for evening in the eternal twilight of the deep, Kael took her to a quieter spot, a garden of glowing coral where they could talk without being overheard. "Tell me about Dorian. Why does he hate me?" Kael was quiet for a moment. "He doesn't hate you. He fears what you represent. Our kingdoms have been balanced in their conflict for 20 years. If Meridian rises again, with you as the queen, that balance shifts. In Dorian," he hesitated, "my brother has always been ambitious. He thought that one day, when the kingdoms finally unified, he might be chosen to rule them all. Your existence threatens that dream." "And you? What do you dream of?" "Peace," Kael said simply. "I've fought in too many border skirmishes, seen too many deaths over territorial disputes. I dream of a day when the three kingdoms work together instead of tearing each other apart." He looked at her. "That's why I searched for you, why I believed the seers, because maybe you're the key to ending this." "That's a lot of pressure for someone who just learned to swim properly," Maren said wryly. He smiled, a real smile this time, warm and genuine. "You're doing better than you think. Most surface dwellers would be catatonic by now from the sheer impossibility of it all." "I've had years of impossible," Maren said. "This is just a different flavor of impossible." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the glowing coral sway in gentle currents. Maren found herself studying Kael's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his silver markings caught the light, the gentle way he moved through the water. "Can I ask you something personal?" she ventured. "Of course. In the surface world, there were expectations for me, marriage, duty, all of that. Is it the same here?" Kael's expression became guarded. "Royalty everywhere comes with obligations, but here we choose our own bonds. When two merfolk decide to join their lives, it's called a tidesworn oath, a magical binding that links their souls to the rhythm of the ocean. It's not entered into lightly." "Have you ever—" "No." He met her eyes. "I've been waiting for someone who makes the ocean sing louder than it already does. Someone who—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "I should let you rest. Tomorrow will be difficult." But as he started to swim away, Maren caught his hand. "Kael, thank you for believing in me, for teaching me, for—" she struggled for words, "for making this less terrifying." He squeezed her hand gently. "Get some sleep, princess. And Maren, when you're in the maelstrom tomorrow, remember, you're not alone. I'll be waiting at the edge, ready to pull you out if things go wrong." "You'd do that? Risk yourself for me?" "Every time," he said quietly, and then he was gone, leaving Maren with a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the water's temperature. Chapter 4. The Maelstrom. Morning came with a shift in the water's taste, sharper, more electric. Maren woke in the chambers that had been prepared for her, surrounded by the alien beauty of her new world. Servants helped her dress in the traditional garb of a Meridian royal, a flowing gown of scales that shifted from silver to blue and a circlet of coral for her hair. The entire court assembled at the edge of the maelstrom. Even from a distance, Maren could see it, a massive whirlpool of water and light, stretching down into unfathomable depths. Lightning crackled within it, impossible underwater lightning that defied all natural law. Queen Nerida approached, placing her hands on Maren's shoulders. "You don't have to do this, child. There is no shame in choosing life over pride." "It's not about pride," Maren said. "It's about proving I belong here, to everyone else, but mostly to myself." "Then may the ocean guide you true." The queen pressed a small object into Maren's hand, a pearl that glowed with soft warmth. "My mother gave this to me when I took my throne. It's a beacon. If you lose your way, hold it tight and think of home. It will guide you back." Kael appeared at her side, his expression tight with worry. "The pearl you seek is at the maelstrom's heart, the eye of storms. It will be guarded by the chaos itself. When you have it, swim up and out. Don't look back, don't get distracted." "Kael." "I know." He touched her face briefly. "Just come back." Dorian's voice rang out across the assembled crowd. "Let the trial of tides begin." Maren took a deep breath, or whatever the underwater equivalent was, and swam toward the maelstrom. The moment she entered its outer currents, the world went mad. She was pulled and spun, tossed like debris in a storm. The wild magic hit her immediately, visions exploding across her sight. She saw herself back in Crestfall, marrying Lord Castor, living a life of quiet desperation. She saw herself drowning, her body floating lifeless in the dark. She saw her father's face, disappointed and angry at her disobedience. "Not real," Maren gasped, fighting to stay oriented. "None of it's real." But the visions kept coming, each more vivid than the last. She saw Kael, but his eyes were cold, telling her she'd been a fool to think she belonged here. She saw the palace burning, not with fire, but with some kind of magical destruction that ate at the very fabric of the ocean. "Truth," she whispered, remembering Kael's advice. "Accept the truth." She stopped fighting the currents and instead let them show her what they would. Yes, she could have married Castor. That was a real possibility she'd rejected. Yes, she might fail here and die. That was the truth of the risk she'd taken. Yes, her father was probably furious, but none of that mattered because she'd made her choice. The moment she accepted this, the visions lost their power. They were still there, swirling around her, but they couldn't knock her off course. She pushed deeper into the maelstrom, swimming with the currents instead of against them. The water grew darker, colder, more chaotic. Lightning struck near her, leaving trails of light that burned across her vision. And then, suddenly, she was through, into the eye of storms. The center of the maelstrom was perfectly calm, a sphere of quiet water in the midst of chaos, and there, floating in the exact middle, was a pearl the size of her fist, glowing with all the colors of the ocean. But it wasn't unguarded. A creature formed from the water itself, massive, serpentine, with eyes of pure light. The guardian of the maelstrom, Maren realized, not alive in any traditional sense, but a manifestation of the ocean's wild magic. "Who claims the eye of storms?" Maren said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I am Mariselle of Meridian. I claim this pearl as proof of my right to rule. Many have claimed, few have proven worthy. What makes you different from those who came before?" Maren thought about the easy answer, her birthright, her bloodline, her royal mark, but she remembered Kael's words about truth, and she knew those weren't the real reasons. "Nothing," she said honestly. "I have no special power, no great destiny. I'm just someone who refused to accept the life others planned for me, someone who heard the ocean calling and had the courage, or the foolishness, to answer." The guardian studied her with its impossible eyes. "You speak truth, but truth alone is not enough. The ocean demands sacrifice. What will you give to claim your birthright?" "What do you want?" "Your certainty," the guardian said. "Your belief that you know what's right. The ocean is change, is chaos, is infinite possibility. To rule Meridian, you must embrace uncertainty. Can you do that? Can you rule without being sure you're making the right choice?" Maren thought about her father, always so certain of his decisions. She thought about Lord Castor, who never doubted his own importance. She thought about people who wielded power like a weapon, never questioning their right to do so. "Yes," she said, "I can lead without certainty. I can make decisions knowing I might be wrong, and be willing to change course if I am. That's not weakness, that's wisdom." The guardian made a sound like laughter, like waves breaking. "Well spoken, child of two worlds. Take the pearl, but know this, the moment you claim it, you claim all the burdens that come with it. The throne of Meridian is not a prize, it's a responsibility that will consume your life." "I know," Maren said, and reached for the pearl. The moment her fingers closed around it, power flooded through her. Memories crashed over her like a tsunami, her true memories, the ones that had been bound by protective magic 21 years ago. She remembered her parents, King Corin and Queen Liana of Meridian. She remembered being a baby in the palace when the attack came, a coordinated assault by those who feared Meridian's power. She remembered her mother's face as she cast the final spell, sending infant Mariselle through a portal to the surface world, binding her memories so she could live a normal life. "Survive," her mother had whispered. "Grow strong, and when the time is right, the ocean will call you home." Mariselle, gasped as the memories settled into place. She was both people now,
the governor's daughter who'd grown up on land, and the Princess of Meridian who'd been born to rule the deep. "Time to leave," the guardian said. "The maelstrom grows restless."
Mariselle clutched the pearl and swam upward, back through the chaos. But this time, it was different. The wild magic recognized her, parted for her, acknowledged her as something more than a petitioner. She rose through the spinning waters like an arrow, straight and true. She broke through the outer edge of the maelstrom, and immediately Kael was there, catching her, holding her steady. "You did it," he breathed, and she felt his relief like a physical thing. "I was so afraid." "I remember," Mariselle said. "Kael, I remember everything." The assembled court erupted in celebration as she held the pearl aloft. Even Dorian looked grudgingly impressed. Queen Nerita swam forward, tears streaming from her eyes. "Welcome home, Princess Mariselle," she said. "Truly this time." But before Mariselle could respond, the water around them suddenly went cold. A current of darkness spread through the assembly, and figures appeared, merfolk in armor of storm cloud gray, carrying weapons that crackled with lightning. At their head was a woman of terrifying beauty, with skin like a thunderhead and eyes that flashed with electricity. "How touching," she said, her voice carrying across the water. "The lost princess returns. I am Queen Tempest of the Storm Kingdom, and I'm here to collect what's mine." "The Eye of Storms belongs to whoever claims it in the trial," Queen Nerita said coldly. "You have no right." "I have every right," Queen Tempest interrupted. "Meridian fell to my mother's forces 21 years ago. Its territories are mine by right of conquest, and now its heir has conveniently appeared, just as we're about to finalize our claim to the ruins." She smiled, showing teeth. "How about a trade, little princess? That pearl and your immediate abdication of all claims to Meridian in exchange for peace. Refuse, and the 3 kingdoms go to war. How many deaths will you have on your conscience?" Mariselle felt every eye on her, the court, the warriors, Kael at her side, all waiting for her response. She thought about the Guardian's words, about ruling without certainty, about making choices that might be wrong. "No," she said clearly. "The pearl is mine, Meridian is mine, and I will not trade either for a false peace built on threats." Queen Tempest's vanished. "Then you've chosen war." "I've chosen to stand my ground," Mariselle corrected. "Whether that leads to war depends on you." For a long moment, the 2 queens stared at each other across the water. Then Queen Tempest laughed, a sound like thunder. "Brave, stupid, but brave. Very well, princess, keep your pearl for now. But know this, the 3 kingdoms will meet in council in 7 days to decide Meridian's fate. And if you can't convince us all to recognize your claim peacefully," she gestured, and her warriors raised their lightning weapons, "then we'll settle it the old way, with blood and magic and the screams of the dying." She vanished as suddenly as she'd appeared, taking her warriors with her. In the silence that followed, Mariselle felt her legs, fins now, trembling. Kael steadied her with a hand on her shoulder. "You just declared war on the most powerful kingdom in the ocean," he said quietly. "I know. They could destroy us all. I know. And yet, you didn't back down." Mariselle looked at him, seeing pride in his eyes despite his worried words. "I've spent my whole life backing down, doing what was expected, playing it safe." She held up the glowing pearl. "Not anymore. If I'm going to be a queen, I'll be one on my own terms, even if it kills me." "Let's try to avoid that last part," Kael said with a slight smile. "I've grown rather attached to having you around."
Chapter 6. The Coronation. The ceremony was held in the ruins of ancient Meridian, a statement of both history and hope. The once great palace had been damaged in the war, but enough remained to show its former glory. Towers of luminescent stone rose from the ocean floor, covered in coral and sea flowers that had reclaimed the space. The great throne room was open to the water now, its walls crumbled, but the throne itself remained, carved from a single massive pearl that glowed with inner light. Representatives from all three kingdoms attended, a sight that would have been unthinkable mere weeks ago. Queen Nerida came with her sons, both Kael and Dorian standing as witnesses. King Solanos brought scholars and historians from Lumeria, eager to access Meridian's sealed archives. Even Queen Tempest arrived with a delegation, though her storm warriors remained alert, hands never far from their weapons. Mariselle wore the traditional robes of Meridian's rulers, flowing garments of sea silk that shifted through every shade of blue and green, adorned with pearls and coral. On her head sat a circlet of twisted silver and gold, simple but elegant. High Priestess Calantha, an ancient merwoman who'd served Meridian before its fall, conducted the ceremony. She was one of the few survivors of the original court, and tears streamed down her weathered face as she saw her kingdom rise again. "We gather in the ruins of what was," Calantha intoned, her voice carrying through the water, "to witness the birth of what will be. Meridian fell, yes, but from its ruins new life blooms. Princess Mariselle, do you swear to rule with wisdom, to protect your people, to honor the ancient ways while forging new paths?" "I do," Mariselle said clearly. "Do you swear to remain neutral in the conflicts of others, to be a sanctuary for all who seek peace, to use your power not for conquest but for healing?" "I do." This was the tide-sworn oath, binding her magically. "Do you swear to remember those who came before, to honor the sacrifices that brought you to this moment, to carry forward the legacy of Meridian, not as a weapon, but as a beacon?" "I do." Calantha raised a staff carved from ancient coral, and power surged through the water. Mariselle felt the oath settle into her soul, a magical contract that would hold her to her words. Breaking it would destroy her from within. "Then by the power of the deep, by the ancient right of blood and water, by the choice of your people and the recognition of the three kingdoms, I name you Queen Mariselle of Meridian, keeper of the sacred trust, guardian of the neutral waters. May your reign bring the peace we have so long sought." The assembly erupted in a mixture of cheers and respectful acknowledgement. As Mariselle settled onto the pearl throne, her throne, she felt the weight of history and responsibility, but also a fierce joy. She'd done it. Against all odds, she'd reclaimed her birthright and forged a new path forward. The celebration that followed was subdued but genuine. Nobles from different kingdoms mingled awkwardly, centuries of hostility not easily overcome. But there was music. Haunting songs played on instruments made from shells and coral, and there was hope. Kael found her during a quiet moment, offering her a cup of fermented sea nectar. "How does it feel?" he asked, "being a queen?" "Terrifying," Mariselle admitted. "Ask me again in a year when I've actually had to make some difficult decisions." "You've already made plenty of difficult decisions," he pointed out, "and so far you're doing remarkably well." She smiled at him, warmth blooming in her chest. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Then it's fortunate I plan to stay," Kael said. He took her hand, and she felt the tide-sworn bond between them pulse with energy, growing stronger each day. "If you'll have me, I'd like to formally serve as your chief advisor, to help you build this new kingdom, to stand beside you through whatever comes." "What about Abyssia, your mother, your kingdom?"
My mother understands. She has Dorian to help her rule. And honestly, he smiled, I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with you. Before Mariselle could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Guards were escorting someone through, a young woman with features that seemed caught between myrrh and human, with skin that shimmered like she couldn't quite decide what she was. Isla? Mariselle gasped. Her friend from the surface world stood there, looking completely overwhelmed, water-breathing but clearly struggling with the transformation. Mare, Isla said, then caught herself. I mean, Your Majesty, how do I curtsy underwater? Nobody told me how to curtsy underwater. Mariselle laughed and swam forward, embracing her friend. What are you doing here? Well, you disappeared into the ocean and didn't come back. Your father was furious, Lord Castor was humiliated, and I was worried. So I did some research into your family history, found some very interesting records about your mother's ancestry, and discovered that apparently I have distant Mer blood too. Very distant, like barely there distant, but enough that when I jumped into Tidecaller's Cove and demanded the ocean take me to you, it actually worked. She pulled back, looking at Mariselle with wonder. You're a queen, an actual queen. It's recent, Mariselle said with a smile. And is this, Isla looked at Kael with interest, Prince Kael of Abyssia, my advisor, and, well, I'm courting your queen, Kael said smoothly, if that's acceptable. Acceptable? Isla laughed. It's perfect. Mare's been dreaming about mysterious ocean princes since we were children, though in her stories they usually had more tentacles. Isla, Mariselle felt her face heat. What? I'm just saying reality is pretty good too. As the celebration continued, Mariselle found herself surrounded by people. New subjects who'd returned to Meridian, representatives from other kingdoms, old survivors who remembered her parents. It was overwhelming and wonderful and exhausting all at once. Late that night, after the last guests had departed, Mariselle swam alone to the highest tower of the ruined palace. From there, she could see the vast expanse of ocean spreading in all directions. Her kingdom, her responsibility, her home. Kael joined her, as she'd known he would. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Too much to think about, she admitted. I keep expecting to wake up back in Crestfall to discover this was all a dream. It's real, he assured her. Sometimes the best things are. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the bioluminescent creatures drift past like underwater stars. Kael, Mariselle said softly, when you talked about the tide-sworn oath between merfolk, about bonding souls, is that something you'd want, eventually? He turned to her, his eyes intense. With you? Yes, absolutely yes, but only when you're ready. There's no rush. What if I said I'm ready now? Not for the full bonding, we should probably date for more than a week first, but ready to start down that path, to acknowledge that this, us, is real and worth pursuing. Kael smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through water. Then I'd say, I'm the luckiest prince in all the oceans. He kissed her, and Mariselle felt the bond between them deepen, felt the ocean itself seem to sing its approval. This was right. This was home. Not because of destiny or prophecy or political arrangement, but because she'd chosen it, because they'd chosen each other. Epilogue. Tides of Change. 3 months later, Meridian was thriving. The palace had been partially rebuilt, blending ancient architecture with new designs. The sealed archives had been opened, their knowledge carefully shared among all 3 kingdoms. And most importantly, the waters were peaceful. There had been challenges, of course, territorial disputes that required Mariselle's mediation, old prejudices that didn't disappear overnight, the constant balancing act of remaining neutral while still being effective. But slowly, the dream was becoming reality. Mariselle stood in what had once been her mother's study, now hers, reviewing reports from her advisors. Kael was there, as he always was, helping her navigate the complex politics of underwater kingdoms. Isla had stayed, discovering a talent for diplomacy that surprised everyone, especially herself. "Your Majesty," a messenger arrived, bowing low. "A delegation from the surface world requests an audience. They claim to represent the Coastal Confederation." Mariselle and Kael exchanged glances. This was new. "Send them to the diplomatic chamber," Mariselle instructed. "We'll meet them there." The surface world delegation was led by an older man in formal robes, flanked by guards and advisors. They'd been given temporary breathing enchantments to allow them to survive underwater. "Queen Mariselle," the man said, bowing, "I am Chancellor Petros of the Coastal Confederation. We've heard remarkable things about what you've accomplished here, uniting warring kingdoms, establishing neutral ground, creating peace where there was only conflict." "Thank you, Chancellor. What brings you to Meridian?" "We face our own conflicts," Petros admitted. "The coastal nations have been at each other's throats for years. Trade disputes, territorial waters, fishing rights, petty quarrels that nonetheless cost lives. We wonder if—" he hesitated, "if your model might work for us, if you might be willing to share your insights." Mariselle felt a thrill of possibility. "You want to establish a neutral kingdom on the surface? Perhaps, or perhaps we simply need a mediator who understands both worlds." Petros looked at her hopefully. "You were born to the ocean but raised on land. You understand surface politics and underwater dynamics. Who better to help bridge our divides?" "It would mean expanding Meridian's scope," Kael said quietly to Mariselle, "taking on more responsibility. Or spreading the model that works, showing that peace is possible everywhere, not just in the deep." She looked at the surface world delegation, at these humans seeking the same thing her underwater kingdoms had found, a way past endless conflict. "I'll consider your proposal," Mariselle told Petros, "but I need to consult with my allies, ensure that expanding Meridian's role doesn't threaten the balance we've achieved. Give me 3 days." After they left, Mariselle turned to Kael. "What do you think?" "I think you're never going to have a quiet, simple life, but I also think you were born for this, bridging worlds, making peace, proving that different doesn't mean enemy."
"You'll stay with me?" she asked, "even if it gets complicated?" "Especially if it gets complicated." He took her hands. "I meant what I said about the tide-sworn bond, Mariselle. I'm yours for as long as you'll have me, through every challenge, every triumph, every impossibly difficult decision." She kissed him, feeling the love that had grown between them. Not instant, not magical destiny, but something built day by day through shared experiences and genuine connection. "Then let's do this," she said. "Let's build something bigger than either of us imagined. Let's show both our worlds what's possible when people choose peace over power." "Together," Kael agreed. "Always together." That night, Mariselle stood once more on her tower, looking out at the vast ocean. Somewhere above, beyond the surface she could no longer easily reach, the stars were shining. Somewhere out there, Isla was working on building bridges between Mer and human. Somewhere, people who'd been enemies were learning to be neighbors. It wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, betrayals, moments when she questioned everything. But she'd faced the maelstrom and emerged stronger. She'd turned enemies into allies. She'd built a kingdom from ruins. She could do this. The ocean sang around her, the same song she'd heard all her life, but now she understood it. It wasn't calling her to a place, it was calling her to a purpose. To be the bridge between worlds, to be the keeper of peace, to be exactly who she was meant to be. And as Kael joined her on the tower, his hand finding hers, as they looked out together at the kingdom they were building, Mariselle smiled. She'd run away from an arranged marriage and a predetermined life, and she'd found something far more valuable, a life she'd chosen, a love she'd earned,
and a purpose worth fighting for. The ocean sang, and for the first time, Mariselle sang back, a song of hope, of change, of tides that brought not destruction, but renewal. Her story was just beginning, and she couldn't wait to see where the currents would take her next. The end.